yourself, Michelle I Loves Books. Welcome back to my channel. So I have completely fallen off the bandwagon on doing monthly updates, which was fine because February, most of the books I had read were all within like a different vlog project, so there was only like 2 books worth mentioning, I think. And then March I only read like 1 book, and April there was like 2 books maybe, which one of them was going to be included in a different vlog, so it's just been really kind of funky. However, May I actually read a lot of books. So basically these are books I have recently read during quarantine. In March, the only book I read was called The Lookalike by Erica Spindler. This is an adult thriller. It's actually a really short book, and I felt it was a really quick read. I think I read it in like 1 sitting. It was like so nice to just curl up with a book for the first time in so long and just like read it all in 1 sitting. I think that played into my enjoyment of the book. This is a book about a woman who's about my age, about 34 years old. She has been away in London at a school for the last 10 years to get away from the trauma of events that had happened back home. Her mom actually has a delusional disorder. When Sienna returns home, her worst fears are coming back to haunt her. I feel like specifically thrillers are hard to really expand on a little bit more. Just, you don't want to spoil anything, and it can be really hard not to spoil something. So I enjoyed this book while I read it, but to be honest, it was just okay. So I gave this book a 3.5. The writing style is really easy to get into, and the twist is kind of interesting. The characters are just meh. So those are my overall feelings on the book. In April was the month of the magical readathon, the O.W.L.S portion. And I really did not do well at all. I really was not sure how much reading I was going to get done, so I committed to participating in it. I made a spreadsheet. I was not sure like what careers I was going to be able to read for. So I didn't do well at all. I read 1 book. I couldn't find the time to read as much as I would have liked to. And the 1 book I read was huge. I had just received this book as a gift, and so I definitely wanted to read it. I was really excited to read it too, so this took precedence over just trying to read as many books to fit the prompts, because I really wanted to read this book. Plus, I wanted to take my time and really enjoy this book and not try to rush through it just so that I could, I've been talking about this book a lot lately. I even made a book talk video about it, which has spoilers. I will link that below. But this book also, I just talked about what this book was about in my haul video. So really quickly, as I've talked about this book so much lately, this is about a half, and I'm pretty sure everyone already knows about this book. It's very hyped up. This is about a half-fae, half-human young woman. She loses all of her friends, and then she winds up in engagement with an angel to solve the crime, finds that she's in a much bigger plot. But the world building in this, the characters are amazing. Overall, I love this book so much. I also finished City of Lost Souls. That will be in my Shadowhunters reading vlog whenever that comes up. I swear that 3rd section of this vlog has taken me forever. It's coming. So to sum up the O.W.L.S for the magical readathon, it does not look like I'm in good shape for the NEWT's portion of the readathon at all. Here you are looking at a spreadsheet that I have created because I just really wanted the opportunity to share the spreadsheet. I found it really helpful. I was not sure what career I wanted to read for, so I listed the prompts with possible books to fit the prompts, some of the top careers I was most interested in, and then that way I could easily see where I was with the books that I read, what careers I was closest to completing. I personally found the spreadsheet really helpful. If this is something that you would like, I can share it with you. Just let me know. Most people, I think, know what careers they want to go for. I had no idea. I mean, they all sound so fantastic. Getting into May, I listened to Illuminae Files on audiobook. I had read the physical book, but I really wanted to experience it in the audiobook. I heard it's just fantastic. It's a full cast, and I was really surprised. Nobody told me that you also get like sound effects throughout. I've seen some books where they might start the book with like some music, or like maybe if there's like a part 1 or part 2, you hear a little bit of music. Not like throughout the whole book where there's like radio static, banging and clanging and different things like that. I was really surprised by that. So yeah, it's a totally different experience. Also, it got me into listening to audiobooks again. So I know that that was something I was really struggling with for a long time, like pretty much since the beginning of the year. I just have had a really hard time getting into audiobooks. I would be really interested in starting books, but then as I'd listened to them, they just weren't making sense or I wasn't following along. So this was a really great way to kind of break back into listening to audiobooks again. And so what is this book about? If you do not know, this is a science fiction book. It takes place in space on like 2 different spaceships. There's also another ship that I think is like whatever government agency that is coming after them. Also, there's like a virus outbreak on one of the ships, so they practice like quarantine, which I thought was befitting for this time and what's going on around the world right now. There's also the supercomputer Aiden, and I'm sorry, I really don't actually know any other better way to explain that one, but supercomputers are always interesting. The physical book, I feel like it's necessary to mention that it is written in like an alternative narrative through emails, text messages, things like that. Also, in the month of May was the first Because We Can Readathon event that I was super excited to join. It's hosted by Just a Little Bit Random, Bruising Reviews, and Stars and Embers. If you've been hanging around my channel, I posted video challenges for each of the days. There was video challenges and reading challenges. But here we're going to talk about the reading challenges because we've already exhausted the video challenges. I really did great for this readathon. We were able to double up as many books as you wanted to the 7 prompts. So I picked 2 books that fit all of the prompts. The first book was Ready Player One. I actually listened to this one on audiobook. It's narrated by Will Wheaton. I thought that he did a really good job with narrating this book, and I really just like the tone of his voice. It's just easy to listen to. By the way, if you notice, I've actually started to make note of the narrators of each of the books that I listen to on audiobook, because I'm starting to find that the narrator is very important to my enjoyment of the book, and if there's a narrator that I like, I want to see if there's other books narrated by them. Anyway, this book takes place in a futuristic society where this man has created this video game called the Oasis. And it's like an MMO style game. Everyone who plays can play with each other. You create your own personalized avatar. However, it's advanced technology, or you have like a VR headset and a bodysuit, or like if you want your character to walk, like you have to walk. So it's just completely immersive. So the creator of this game died. He created this competition, and the one who finds all of the keys will inherit the game and all of his assets. But it's not like it's an easy task. It has been many years, and this competition is still going. There are like the pros who are funded by a company, and they have latest gear. They are top level players. They can get in anywhere. And then there's the other group that our main character belongs to. They're not organized or funded, and I forget what they're called. So it takes us on our main character's journey as he is solving this puzzle. So first going into this book, it was kind of a roller coaster. Like, I had seen the movie, and so I kind of knew all about what was supposed to happen. I don't know if that kind of takes away from your enjoyment of reading a book for the first time. I had some other issues with this book too, of like really enjoying this book and then also kind of getting bored with this book and then end up liking it. There were some really funny and cool moments, and then there was a lot of info dumping. Some of the situations presented to us were just far too convenient. For example, in order to figure out this puzzle, like, you have to know the creator's intimate details of his personal life, and how our character explains how he comes upon this knowledge that clues him into what he thinks the creator was wanting, or how he arrived at this answer. It was written up like this total fluke or happenstance of luck. So I don't know. The main character is the narrator telling us his story. And I didn't really think that I understood what pretentious writing was. I never really thought about it that much until this book. And this character is very pretentious. As is, I guess, the whole book. This character sure loves to boast about how knowledgeable he is. He's the best at everything. This book was trying to be nostalgic by just name dropping so many things, from cult classic movies to music to video games, and also on top of it showing off how they're connected in some obscure way, etc., etc. That got really old. When I listened to probably the equivalent of a half-page list of cool bands, it really started to feel like a kid trying to prove how cool he was by the type of music that he was listening to. I never really liked that about characters or people, so I found him generally irritating. But also, it's kind of on brand, right? Anyway, I am glad that I kept with it. There's definitely a lot more in the book than the movie, as usual, including that the book spans for about a year's time period. There's also this really clever con that he pulls and that was not in the movie. So my lasting feelings is that I can appreciate the preservation of the 70s and 80s in this futuristic world and this really creative video game world, the Oasis. That is really cool. There were so many details about how kids in this futuristic world would do virtual learning in the Oasis, and I thought that that was really interesting. Like, I can actually literally see that, especially after what we've just gone through in quarantine and we're all having to learn how to homeschool. I think that virtual learning in the Oasis would have been a lot easier than what I had to go through. I would likely be one of these kids that would totally live in the Oasis as well. There's a lot of discussion on really not knowing who's on the other end of that avatar. I think that it brings up a lot of reality, especially in this totally immersive game where your life in the Oasis is almost more ideal than to the real world, and you have friends on there that maybe you've never even met in person, and you may go to school in the Oasis. You also have to maintain the reality that that avatar is not really them. So there's a little bit of discussion on that, and I thought that was really good. Overall though, as far as like a star rating goes, I ended up giving this book like 3.5 stars. Like, I enjoyed it, but the writing did bring it down a bit. It's just kind of so-so. That's my ultimate. The next book I read was A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridgid Kremerer, and man, I'm so glad I got to this book finally. I just devoured this book. It had me hooked. It's the first in a series called the Cursebreaker series. The next one has already been released too. It's A Heart So Fierce and Lonely or something? Or A Heart So Dark and Lonely? Anyways, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I really like the way it was done. I know that the Beauty and the Beast retellings are flooding the market. People are just over it. We want something new, but I do like the way this one was done. I liked the writing style, I liked the characters, and the world. It was still a really good time. So our Beauty is a girl in the modern world. Her family really struggles financially. She and her brother are trying to make ends meet. This one night that changes her world, she's helping her brother as a lookout while he does whatever he has to do to bring home money, and he winds up getting in over his head. But while she is on lookout, she sees a girl getting attacked across the street. So she goes over there to intervene and hits this guy in the head, and he grabs her, and then she is all of a sudden in this different place and time where things feel like they're stuck in time. I also really like that our main character had cerebral palsy. I really think that I mentioned this before, that I really like when characters have like physical things, and I don't want to call it a disability. I just like that. I thought it was really cool. So let me say I really like this book, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This is an adult thriller about a woman who has agoraphobia, and she spends most of her days just kind of looking out, peeping through her window at the neighbors, seeing what's going on in the outside world, and she witnesses a crime at her new neighbor's house. So she calls for help, and all this stuff happens. They don't believe her. Again, a thriller, can't give away too much. I didn't really end up liking this book very much. I did sort of finish it. I got to a point where I just started, I wanted more out of this book. I thought it was really cool to learn about a person who has agoraphobia and like what you're supposed to do with your day all day. Like, I'd probably be doing the same thing with my camera, peeping at the neighbors. I also liked learning like how she got it. The mystery was average, I think. To be honest, it wasn't really that thrilling. I really didn't care for any of the characters. She rented her basement to a man who's mostly gone. I really didn't like that whole thing. So I just found this book very disappointing. I gave it 3 stars. The things that I liked about this book, there were probably more things that I disliked about this book. I wanted more, I think, of like what her neighbors' stories were from her observations. I wanted less. I guess I should probably, before I go into this too much more, say that you might want to mute this until I put the book down, because I'm probably going to be spoiling it for you if you haven't read it. The thing between her and Renter, what happens between them, I guess it's relatable, it's realistic, but it just felt like it was tossed in there unnecessarily. All that this book ended up having to say, I think it would have been better if it was shorter. But also it's hard to tell if Lead Up was giving it time to build up the suspense and the suspicion, and it was driving me crazy, but our character kind of going crazy too. So like, I guess it maybe gets you in her headspace. It definitely succeeded in that. So maybe it's just me that I didn't have the patience for it. I think that this was too reminiscent of the book I just read called The Lookalike. Actually, The Lookalike is probably getting its inspiration from this. I don't remember when this book was published, but I know The Lookalike just came out this year, and I just did this book. Although The Lookalike was better because it was shorter. I would have liked there to be more variety of what a person does all day in their home. At the beginning, it was cool, like strange behavior peeping in. She had like the story of like what her neighbors were doing, and her neighbor didn't know that so-and-so was cheating on him. But then after that, it was just like the same thing every day. Drinking, taking pills, getting worse every single day, over and over and over, and I was bored. Then she had the whole like text messaging thing with her clients, and I'll be honest, I did not care about those conversations. Is it just me? I was really paying attention to them at first. I think this person's a doctor, a psychologist, and she's abusing alcohol and prescription drugs. Don't take advice from her. No, she's got her own fair share of problems. She has no business giving anyone else advice. I think that that's my feels on this book. It was hyped up, and I was like so excited for like a year to get to this book, and I was just like, I need to read the book. Every time I saw it on my shelf, I need to read this book. And now I'm like, why did I read that book? It was a waste of my time. But if I didn't read it, I wouldn't have known that. Moving on, the next book that I read was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I'm pretty sure that everyone knows what this book is about. I guess it's considered a modern classic, but it's basically a memoir of Sylvia Plath's earlier life and how she was such an excellent straight A student, an aspiring writer, and then she's hit with a sudden onset of depression. How in that time period, how they handled mental health, and it was rough to read through those bits, but it's also very impactful. Just such a good book. It's all so tragic and so sad. There were some bits in there that were very relatable. Not that I personally have depression or even really know anyone who has severe depression like this, but everyone has bouts of sadness, and at some point or another you can relate. I just feel like I could specifically relate to her feelings. Where I feel like this really kind of started was her feelings of having so many different things that she has an interest in, but how does she pick one of them to really focus on and go into for like a career? And she kind of wrestles with this, well, if I do this, but then I could do this, and she's just like all over the place. And she was so bright, and she had all these privileges that she really could do anything that she wanted, but she couldn't focus on one, so she does nothing. Again, this seems to be the stem of her depression, as she agonizes with it a lot. She also has a way of seeing people, and she's not impressed by them. Like, she sees the truth of them. She doesn't take them at face value, and it's cynical and callous, and it's kind of funny because it's rather true. And sometimes it's not true. Actually, there was this whole thing with the guy that she was dating that I think was mildly not true. It's just, I guess, just the way she saw it. So anyways, I am glad that I finally got this book. This has been on like my TBR for years and years and years, and I finally just randomly picked it up and devoured it. So that was good. The next book I read was A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This was a gift from my husband. I just talked about this. A book talk video. Prequel to the Hunger Games. I think everyone's heard about this book. I'm not going to explain it that much. I have read it. It was really good. I guess the only thing you need to know about it is this is not a novella. It's a solid book. It's over 500 pages. Also, it's like an origin story of Snow, and you can see from this book to the Hunger Games how have evolved, and I really enjoyed it. So let's go ahead and get into my stats. This is usually much easier to calculate on a month-to-month basis because I like to kind of keep track of my own page counts or how many books I'm reading. But again, I mean, I'm only tracking for myself, really. I'm sure nobody actually really cares, right? But my Goodreads goal was set to 150. I have read 31 books, putting me 30 books behind schedule. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play catch up. Although my library did just open last week, and I checked out the next 4 in the Lumberjane series, so that'll help. I just started reading Lumberjanes number 4 with my son Aaron. He loves that series. We like to share in reading graphic novels like that. There's an annual reading challenge created by the Spine Breakers. I will leave the information linked below, and here is where I'm sitting at. I am late to start this challenge, but it's called If You've Got It, Read It. I really like that the goal is to help you read the books that are already on your shelf, read more of what you already own. So I've been filling in that bad boy. That's what happened. That's how to wrap up what I've been reading. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.